In the spring of 1945, World War II in Europe was drawing to a close. Allied forces had successfully pushed back Nazi Germany on multiple fronts. Berlin fell. Adolf Hitler committed suicide on April 30, 1945, and on May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. The remaining Nazi leaders were arrested to face trial. As the Nazi regime collapsed, Allied forces uncovered the horrifying reality of the concentration camps. When American, British, and Soviet soldiers liberated camps like Buchenwald, Dachau, Bergen-Belsen, and Auschwitz, they discovered unimaginable scenes. Piles of unburied bodies lay scattered everywhere, and the surviving prisoners were in pitiable condition, their bodies so emaciated they resembled living skeletons due to starvation and torture. Many prisoners were so weak they could barely move, while deadly diseases ran rampant within the camps. On January 27, 1945, Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz, the largest Nazi concentration and extermination camp located in Poland. There, they found over 6,000 living prisoners, almost all of them starved and severely ill. Previously, tens of thousands of Auschwitz prisoners had been driven by the SS on death marches westward, leaving behind only a handful who were too weak to be moved. Evidence of mass murder also remained at Auschwitz. Warehouses filled with victims' belongings that the Nazis had not had time to destroy. Soviet soldiers discovered hundreds of thousands of prisoner uniforms and over 6 tons of human hair that had been shorn, all belonging to the murdered victims. Amidst the world's shock and horror at the discoveries in the concentration camps, attention turned to those responsible. One of them was Wilhelm Friedrich Boger, an SS officer whose name would later become known as one of Auschwitz's most cruel executioners. Wilhelm Boger was one of the perpetrators behind the horrors uncovered at the Auschwitz camp. Born on December 19, 1906, in Stuttgart, Germany, Boger grew up amidst the turmoil of post-World War I Germany. From a young age, he was influenced by fanatical Nazi ideology. In his teens, he joined a nationalist youth organization that later became the Hitler Youth. His radical tendencies continued. Boger became a member of the Nazi Party in 1929 and joined the SA paramilitary organization in the same year. Shortly thereafter, in 1930, he also joined the elite SS unit, demonstrating his deep loyalty to the Nazi movement from its inception. Boger himself would later boast that he was an old member of the Nazi movement, signaling his fanaticism towards Hitler's ideology. Boger's career ascended with the consolidation of Nazi power in Germany. After Hitler came to power in 1933, Boger joined the Nazi political police. He was accepted as an auxiliary police officer and served in the emergency political police in Stuttgart. In 1937, after completing police training, Boger was appointed commissar. However, his reputation was already tainted by violence early on. It was recorded that he was involved in an incident of torturing a prisoner during an interrogation in 1936, which led him to custody. When World War II broke out in 1939, Boger was sent to German-occupied Poland. Initially, he was assigned to the state police office in Zichenau, and soon after led the establishment of a border police post in Ostrołęka. During this period, Boger was involved with the Gestapo to suppress enemies of the regime in the occupied territory. In 1942, he was briefly sent to the battlefield as part of an SS unit, but an injury on the Eastern Front led to his withdrawal from the front lines. This paved his way to Auschwitz. Towards the end of 1942, Wilhelm Boger was transferred to the Auschwitz concentration camp in occupied Poland. He joined the camp's political department, a unit akin to a Gestapo office within the camp. This department was responsible as an extension of the Reich Security main office in the camp, with duties including prisoner registration and administration, receiving new prisoners, maintaining internal security, combating resistance movements within the camp, and conducting interrogations. Within the Auschwitz structure, the political department was the center of intelligence and investigation, and it was here that Boger found fertile ground for his cruel nature. Boger initially served as a subordinate in the political department with the rank of SS Oberscharführer. However, His brutal performance quickly led to his promotion to a key leadership position. By the end of 1943, Boger had achieved the rank of SS Hauptsturmführer and served as head of the interrogation section in Auschwitz. Auschwitz prisoners knew Boger's name with dread. He earned the nickname the Tiger of Auschwitz, due to his reputation as a brutal executioner who mercilessly preyed on his victims. One of Wilhelm Boger's most devilish legacies at Auschwitz was a torture device he invented himself, known as the Boger Swing. This device was so notorious among prisoners that its name evoked terror itself. The Boger Swing was essentially a device for torturing prisoners by swinging them like a pendulum, but in an extremely cruel and painful manner. Physically, the Boger Swing consisted of an iron bar about 1 meter long, hung horizontally by chains from the ceiling. 2 supports or posts were erected as a frame, and the iron bar was placed horizontally between them. When the torture execution began, the victim was first stripped naked. Boger then forced the victim to kneel. The iron bar was placed behind the victim's bent knees, and then the victim's wrists were handcuffed and tied to their ankles, wrapping around the iron bar behind the knees. In this bound position, the iron bar was then lifted and hooked to the chains above, suspending the victim's body upside down, head down, feet up, with knees caught over the iron bar. This position also exposed the victim's buttocks and genitals, making them vulnerable to beatings. With the victim hanging upside down, brutal interrogations ensued. Boger was known to torture his victims on the Boger Swing alongside other guards. As the victim's body swung, guards armed with clubs or iron bars would strike the victim's buttocks, back, or genitals with full force. Prisoners who were victims of Boger's swing often fainted from the excruciating pain. When the victim regained consciousness, the beating would continue until they fainted again. This cruel cycle repeated endlessly, sometimes lasting for extended periods until the victim's body could no longer endure. According to testimonies, after these torture sessions ended, often all that remained of the victim was a bloody lump of flesh, barely recognizable as human. Many prisoners died from this torture. Some died instantly on the spot, while others slowly succumbed to severe injuries sometime later. In addition to the Boger Swing, Boger was involved in many other atrocities. One of the most horrific testimonies was revealed during the Frankfurt Trials in 1963. A female witness recounted how Boger murdered a 5-year-old child. The child, terrified, jumped from a truck that was transporting a group of children to the gas chambers. The little boy cried and held an apple in his hand. Seeing this, Boger felt no pity. Instead, he became enraged. Brutally, Boger grabbed the unfortunate child by his feet, lifted him upside down, and then slammed the child's body as hard as he could against a wall. When Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviets in January 1945, Boger was among the SS staff who managed to escape. He left the Auschwitz camp during the evacuation preceding the arrival of Soviet troops. However, he was eventually captured by American forces on June 19, 1945, in the city of Ludwigsburg, Germany, where his parents lived. Allied authorities planned to extradite him to Poland to stand trial there. However, unexpectedly, Boger managed to escape from Allied prison in November 1946. For more than a decade afterward, Wilhelm Boger lived as a fugitive untouchable by law, ironically, under his real identity and within German society. After escaping, Boger briefly went into hiding. From 1948 to mid-1949, he worked odd jobs as a farm laborer in the Kreilsheim area. He then rejoined his family and lived in the small town of Hemmingen near Leonberg, West Germany, using his real name without suspicion. However, the situation began to change towards the end of the 1950s. In October 1958, Boger's whereabouts were finally discovered. Wilhelm Boger was rearrested by West German authorities at the age of 51. His arrest occurred at his workplace in the Heinkel factory in Stuttgart. In late 1963, the Auschwitz Trials began in Frankfurt. For his crimes, Wilhelm Boger was sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor. He was sent to serve his sentence, and as recorded, Boger died on April 3, 1977, at the age of 70, while still in prison in West Germany. With his death, the final chapter in the life of one of Auschwitz's most brutal executioners was closed.